Emerging in the mid 20th century, the trait approach was the first systematic attempt to study leadership. It challenged the assertion that great leaders, like the ones you see pictured here, are born and not taught. Instead, the trait approach focused on identifying the traits that effective leaders, via nature or nurture, must possess. The trait approach also challenged one of its research contemporaries that said there's no consistent set of traits that separates leaders and non leaders. Instead, your status as a leader varies based upon the situation. For example, Donald Trump. You could say he's pretty strong in the real estate field. The presidential field, however, let's just say that's a different situation. But back to the trait approach. These ideals sparked a surge of research and it went through various cycles of focus, from identifying qualities of great persons, to situational leadership, to the critical role of traits in effective leadership. It's borrowed from some of the very theories that it challenged, all with the intent to find out what characteristics do effective leaders truly embody. Trait theorist Stockdale did some research to find answers. He argues that leaders in various groups emerge if they possess these 8 traits: intelligence, alertness, insight, responsibility, initiative, persistence, self-confidence, and sociability. To be most effective, however, they must be relevant to the situation that the leader is working in. So traits and situational factors are determinants of leadership. Don't believe us? Just look at what happened to Darth Vader. Seriously, if you need more substantial proof, there's a listing on page 21 of the leadership book by Nordhaus. There have been lots of other studies focused on trait theory. They've yielded different but complementary traits, but they emerge as strong forces and indicators of leadership. It's useful to note that all of these theories were influenced by the social and political factors of the times. For instance, in 1959, Mann had a theory of masculinity, which made sense because they were mostly male leaders in practice. In 2006, Jung and Sosik had a visionary and charismatic leadership theory, influenced by the election of President Barack H. Obama. And speaking of presidents, check out Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first female head of state elected in the entire continent of Africa, member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and soror to our very own Jaynemarie. Sirleaf represents several traits central to all the studies on leadership: intelligence, self-confidence, and determination. But we certainly can't talk determination without mentioning this woman. But let's go ahead and add in integrity and sociability for Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, godmother of the Civil Rights Movement and 10th past national president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. But I'm sure you have no idea which member of this group is in that sorority. But all of the traits possessed by those dynamic women are central to effective leadership. But there's also a strong connection between certain personality traits and effective leadership, said Goldberg in 1990 and Judge et al. In 2002. They connected the personality traits that are essential to being an effective leader. The strongest factor? Extroversion. You get a trait, and you get a trait. Everybody gets a trait. And why not add emotional intelligence to our collection? It's been linked with effective leadership by research, and it's defined as the ability to perceive and express emotions, and to use those to think and reason and manage relationships. If you can perceive your own emotions, as well as how others receive those emotions, you might be a powerful leader. So now that we can grasp the related research, we can ponder once again, what exactly is the trait approach? The overarching principle is simple. Having a leader with certain essential traits is important to leadership efficacy. The leader and their traits is what is essential to the leadership process. The trait approach suggests that organizations will be stronger and more efficient if they have leaders who exhibit specific qualities. It also fosters personal awareness of how a particular person leads. They may consider what their strengths are and what their areas of improvement might be. A byproduct of that is clear development of plans, and the reflective process. Definitive yet fluid in nature, the trait approach identifies who the leader is and determines if they are in alignment with the ethos of their organization. Let's take a look at Bill Gates, for example. Not only is he a technological genius and founder of Microsoft, but he sent thousands of students to school and helped them to become lifelong scholars. So what are the strengths of the trait approach? One is that it's just very appealing. It kind of fits in with the idea that leaders are in the front and they are the models for our society. For example, Santa Claus. I know no one here can argue that he's not the ideal leader. Another thing to think about is there's over a century of empirical research behind the trait theory. It's not random. Researchers have spent a wealth of time engaged with this approach, and it's strongly connected to the role that the leader plays in the leadership process and continuum. Again, the traits are indicative of the efficacy of the leader. But of course, no theory is perfect. So let's talk about some of the criticisms of the trait approach. One criticism is that there's no definitive list. There's lots of research studies with traits that could be arguably applied to leaders, but what about the ones that are left off of that list? Like Kwame Nkrumah liberated Ghana and was president for life, so he was brave. What about that? Or what about the fact that sometimes leaders can exhibit positive qualities at one time, but then don't necessarily do it the next? Like this controversial image of George Bush. On September 11th, he was our hero. And then he said that they had weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and they didn't, and then that was a problem. But to be as nonpartisan as possible, let's go on the other side of the aisle and look at a president who made a mistake. No, not that mistake. I'm referring to a time in 2008 when he lost his cool and composure when addressing then candidate Obama, who was running against his wife, Hillary Clinton. Now, Bill had a reputation for being one of the most charismatic and cool presidents we had, but in this case, he did not maintain that trait. So we can conclude that just because someone emerges as a leader in one situation doesn't mean that he'll be able to maintain it. And we can continue to include that the trait approach provides valuable information about the essential qualities of leadership, and that can be applied to all leaders at all contexts. Companies and managers can rely on this approach to define who they are and also help them to connect with others. Even though it's not a definitive list of traits, the traits have been identified and converted into personal and professional assessment, and that can be used to gauge leadership potential. So if this approach appeals to you, you might look at your situation and then look at yourself as a leader and think, what traits might I need to add to my list?